Welcome to Maths for All. I'm Aisling Flynn. This is Complex Numbers 1.1, Imaginary Numbers. So first let's talk about real numbers and real roots. So this is a picture of a function, a quadratic function, f of x, and the function is x squared minus 1. So you can see that it's U-shaped, it's symmetrical, and it crosses the x-axis. Okay, we can see from the graph of f of x that it crosses the x-axis in two places at x equals 1 and x equals minus 1. These are called the roots of the function. Okay, and they're shown there with the yellow arrows. To find the roots algebraically, so using algebra, we ask when is the value of the function equal to 0? So when is the y value equal to 0? So we put our function x squared minus 1 equals to 0. In this case we can solve by adding 1 to both sides, and we get x squared equals 1. And to solve for x, you get the square root of both sides, so x is equal to the square root of 1. Now the square root of 1 could be plus 1, or it could be minus 1. So there you get the two roots that we showed previously on the graph. Okay, and they're known as real roots, where the red line of the function crosses the x-axis. Okay, let's look at a function with no real roots. So shown on the diagram is a function called g of x, x squared plus 1, and you can see that it is fully above the x-axis, so it does not cross under the x-axis, it does not touch the line, it does not cross over the line of the x-axis. Okay, so we say that this function has no real roots. Now this mathematically caused problems for people working in various areas, so in heavy maths, where they needed to solve this. Okay, so trying to find the roots algebraically, first of all, just like before, if we solve for x by putting the function equal to 0, you get x squared equals minus 1. The next step would be to get the square root of minus 1. And negative numbers do not have a square root, because if you square anything, it turns out to be positive. So like I said, this posed a mathematical problem. To solve problems involving the square roots of negative numbers, an imaginary number I was introduced, so I for imaginary. This has real-life uses in areas such as electronic engineering, sound engineering, and computer science, such as software development, and other areas also. And the definition of this imaginary number I is that I equals the square root of minus 1. Okay, so I is the square root of minus 1, and the square root of other negative numbers can be written in terms of I. Okay, so for example, the square root of minus 16, you could write it as the square root of 16 times the square root of minus 1. So separate the minus 16 into 16 times minus 1, and we do have a square root for 16, so we can write that as 4, and the root of minus 1 is I, so we give 4i. Okay, so simplify each of the following using the I symbol. So taking the first one, instead of minus 4, we can write it as 4 times minus 1. And we could separate those. Root 4 times root minus 1. We know the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of minus 1 is I, so our answer is 2i. Okay, now as you get more familiar with it, we can skip a few steps. Okay, so 100 by minus 1 is here. Now we can skip the next few steps. We could say straight away that the root of 100 is 10, and the root of minus 1 is I, so it's 10i. Okay, similarly here, well, straight away we can say that the square root of 64 is 8, and the square root of minus 1 is I, so that minus there leads to the I part. Same here. Square root of 49 is 7, and the square root of minus 1 gives me I, and the last one is just I. Okay. Now alternatively, here we have what we had as our definition of I, but alternatively we can use I squared equals minus 1, so that's squaring both sides, and you see that down here. If in your workings something like 5I squared comes up, well, straight away I want you to circle I squared. Okay, and from now on, as soon as that pops up in your work in the following lessons, you can replace it with minus 1. Okay, so that's this going in here. And we can evaluate 5I squared as being the same as minus 5. Okay, so let's look here. Evaluate 6I squared. So we will write it as 6 times minus 1, so it's equal to minus 6. 20 times minus 1 is equal to minus 20. 12 times minus 1 is equal to minus 12, and just take care of the last one because you have minus 3 by minus 1. Multiplying negative by negative, we get plus 3. Okay, so you do it now. Check you've understood by doing your quiz called Complex Numbers 1.1 Imaginary Numbers and doing the matching written exercises. It's a short glossary.